Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Now we will see some frequently asked questions in compiler design in various competitive examinations like TIB, GATE exam, NET exam, ISRO exam, NIE, LIT, scientist exam, etc. Okay. So today's revision series will be focusing on the following topics, namely intermediate code generation, left recursion elimination, ambiguous and unambiguous grammar. We will see what is first and follow, and we'll also see what is canonical collection of LR0 items. Now let's get into the video. So the first question is a question which is asked in GATE 2018 examination. Consider the following statements in 3-address code. They have given a 3-address code. P is equal to A minus B, Q is equal to P into C, P is equal to U into V, and Q is equal to P plus Q. They have asked which of the following corresponds to a static single assignment form of the above code. Now, static single assignment is also called as SSA, called in short, and it is one form of intermediate code representation. Now let's learn what is the meaning of static single assignment and how, given a 3-address code, how to convert it into SSA form. And then we'll come back to this question of what will be the correct answer for this. So here, static single assignment form is nothing but it is an intermediate representation which facilitates certain code optimizations. Now it is called static single assignment because all assignments in SSA should be made to variables with distinct names. So the thing which you have to remember here is whenever you are making an assignment to a variable, that variable on the LHS should always be a variable with a distinct name. Okay. So we differentiate between variables by using subscripts in the SSA representation. Okay, for example, one example is given here. So suppose you have a 3-address code like this. The corresponding static single assignment form will look like this. Okay, so since you have on the left hand side, you have different times in which P and Q are being used. So first, the first occurrence of P is represented as P1. So A plus B is added and it is stored in P1, and then P is replaced as P1 minus C. So here we have the first occurrence of Q. So we denote it as Q1. Next we have P again in the left hand side. So now that is being changed to P2. And here we have used Q here. Since we have changed it to Q1, we use the same Q1 here. And then here in the fourth statement, we have E minus P. Okay, so the previous value of P has to be used in the fourth line. Now the previous value of P has been changed as P2. So here also we write E minus P2, and it is now assigned to P3 because already we have used P1 and P2. So now we are defining a new variable called P3. And then this P plus Q has to be changed as P3 plus, this has to be changed to the most recent value of P and Q. So the most recent value of P is P3 and the most recent value of Q is Q1. Okay, so we change it as P3 plus Q1 is equal to, so P3 plus Q1, and here we have one more occurrence of Q. So already we have used Q1. So now this is represented by using a distinct name called as Q2. Okay. In short, whenever you have a variable on the left hand side and that is going to be used multiple times, every time we will represent it with distinct names, and that distinct names is represented by using subscripts. So first occurrence of P is represented as P1, and if P1 occurs for the second time in the LHS, it will be represented as P2. If P appears for the third time in the LHS, it will be represented as P3 and so on. Okay. Now, one more important thing which you have to remember in this static single assignment form is the use of a pi function. Now, if it is a normal assignment statement, it is very easy to change the variable definitions by using subscripts. But if you have conditional branching statements like this, then see if the value of the flag is true, then the value of x should be -1. Otherwise, if the value of the flag is false, then the value of x should be 1. And that particular value has to be multiplied with a and assigned to y. Now, if I have to convert this type of statements into static single assignment form, then what would be the representation of x to be used here in the line y is equal to x into a? For that, SSA uses a conventional notation called as pi function. Okay, so that will be changed like this. If flag, so obviously we know when you have two occurrences of x, you have to replace it with x1 and x2. So we replace it as x1 is equal to -1, else x2 is equal to 1. And then here we don't know which condition is going to be evaluated, whether flag is going to be true or false. So what the pi function will do is, it will have the value of, it will evaluate and it will have the value of x1 if in case the control passes through the true part of the conditional statement. If in case the condition evaluates to be true, then pi function will be having the value of x1. If in case the condition evaluates to be false, then the pi function will be having the value of x2. Okay, so whatever is the value, depending on whatever condition is being evaluated, that corresponding resultant value of x will be there in the pi function. Okay, that particular resultant value of x which is there in the pi function will be assigned to x3, and then that x3 will be used in this statement. Okay, x3 into a will be assigned to y1. So this is one thing which you have to remember when you have conditional branching statements given in SSA in the question, then you have to use pi function like this. Okay, now coming back to our question, they have given us in 3 address code like this. Now if you have to convert this 3 address code, P and Q occurs many times in the left hand side of the 3 address code. Okay, so this P and Q occurrence has to be changed to P1 and Q1, and this P and Q occurrence has to be changed to P2 and Q2 normally. Now this P1 Q1 representation is up to our choice. Instead of P1 Q1, you can also use P3 Q3 and P4 Q4. It is entirely up to us. Okay, it's not necessary that P has to be replaced with P1 only. So here what we do is the first occurrence of P is replaced with P1, and then we say P1 is equal to A minus B. Then we have P into C. So P is now changed to P1. So here I replace it as P1 into C. That is being assigned to, now Q is used many times in the LHS. So Q is being changed to Q1. And then we have P is equal to U into V. Now since P is occurring for the second time here, and in SSK, all assignments should be made to variables with distinct names only, unique names. So this P has been changed to P2, and then here we had the recent value of the variables P and Q. So the recent value of the variable P is P2 here, and the recent value of the variable Q is Q1 here. Okay, so P2 plus Q1 is added and it is stored in the variable Q2. Okay, now in the answer in the question, they have not mentioned anything which coincides exactly, but the one which coincides, instead of P1, Q1, P2, Q2, they have used P3, Q3, P4, Q4, and Q5. Okay, so the right answer for this question would be option 2, which coincides with the notations which we have in our answer. The next question is, this is a question which is asked in the NET examination. So two grammars have been given to us. One grammar is S derives SBS or S derives A. The other grammar is S derives AB or AB, A derives GAB or A, and B derives ABD or B. We have to say which of the option is correct. So only G1 is ambiguous, or only G2 is ambiguous, or both G1 and G2 are ambiguous, or both G1 and G2 are not ambiguous. So to answer this question, we need to know what is the meaning of ambiguous grammar and what is a non-ambiguous grammar. Okay, so an ambiguous grammar is nothing but for a given grammar, for generating a given string of terminals, if you are able to generate more than one parse tree, or more than one leftmost derivation, or more than one rightmost derivation, then it is said to be a ambiguous grammar. Okay, to show that a grammar is ambiguous, all we have to do is we need to find some string such that for the given grammar we are able to derive that string by using more than one parse tree. If you are able to derive a particular string from a given set of productions of a grammar by using more than one parse tree or more than one leftmost derivation or more than one rightmost derivation, then it is a ambiguous grammar. I hope you remember what is the meaning of leftmost derivation. Leftmost derivation means that in the process of derivation, the leftmost non-terminal is being replaced at every step. Okay, so here, for example, one example is given here. String derives string plus string or string minus string or the number 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 9. So if you have the set of terminals like this 6 minus 4 plus 3, if you have a string like this, then you can generate it by using two different parse trees by using the same grammar like this. Okay, from string I can expand it to string plus string. From string again I can expand it to string minus string, and then from string I can derive 6, and from this string I can derive 4, and from this string I can derive 3. In the same way, I can use another parse tree. I can represent 6 minus 4 plus 3 by using another type of parse tree. So since two different parse trees exist for this string, for this particular set of productions of the grammar, this grammar is a ambiguous grammar. Okay, and parsers will not be able to deal with such grammars, ambiguous grammars. So now coming back to our question, they have given this grammar and they have asked whether both the grammars are ambiguous or both are not ambiguous. We have to find out. So for the first grammar, I have taken the string AB, AB, ABA. Okay, I have used the productions S derives SBS, and then again I have expanded it to S derives SBS. So I am able to derive two different parse trees. I'm able to get two different parse trees for the given productions of the grammar for this particular string. Okay, so since I'm able to get two different parse trees, the first grammar is not a is a ambiguous grammar. Okay, so for the second grammar is S derives AB or AB, B derives ABB or B, and A derives GAB or A. Okay, for this, let's say if I have to generate the string AB, I can directly generate it by the start symbol S derives AB, or I can use this production S derives A and capital B, and from B I can derive B, okay, the terminal B. So there are two different parse trees existing for this string, and so this grammar is also an ambiguous grammar. So the right answer for this would be both G1 and G2 are ambiguous. The next question is ISRO 2015 question. Which grammar rules violate the requirement of the operator grammar? A, B, C are variables and small a, B, C are terminals. Now they have given 4 productions and they are asking which set of productions, which grammar rules violates operator grammar. Now operator grammar is nothing but it is used to define mathematical operations, okay, wherein you will have an operator and you will have terminals to the left and right side of the operator. So that means in an operator grammar, there can be no two adjacent non-terminals on the RHS of the production. And the other one is we cannot have epsilon productions. Okay, based on these two requirements, if you see A derives BC, you have two adjacent non-terminals on the RHS of the production. So one is not an operator grammar. Similarly, for the fourth option, A derives epsilon, you have an epsilon production on the RHS. So that is also not an operator grammar. So 1 and 4 only, they violate the requirement of the operator grammar. Next question is, which of the following is true for the grammar given? S derives L or A, and the other one is L derives L dot S or S. So they are asking if it will be parsed by LR0, SLR1, LL1 parser or not. So for LL1 parser, it has to be a LL1 grammar. So let's see what is the meaning of a LL1 grammar. A grammar G is said to be LL1 grammar if whenever you have two distinct productions like A derives alpha or A derives beta, then for no terminal A, do both alpha and beta derive strings beginning with A. Um, that means if all the strings which are derived by this alpha or beta, okay, in the RHS, whatever strings are derived by using the RHS of the production, if alpha derives a particular string which is starting with A, then beta should not derive a string which is also starting with A. Okay, so that means we need to find the first of the RHS of the productions. We need to find the first of the RHS of the productions, and the first set should not be intersecting. There should be no common terminals commonly intersecting between the first of alpha or the first of beta. We need to find the first of the RHS of the right hand side of the productions, and that first set has to be unique. There should be nothing which is common or intersecting between the first of the RHS of A derives alpha and the first of A derives beta production. Okay, it's because when you are creating the LL1 parsing table, if you have a first set which is intersecting between A derives alpha production and A derives beta production, then both the productions A derives alpha and A derives beta will be placed in the same cell in the LL1 parsing table. And that kind of grammars cannot be parsed by a LL1 parser. So we need to check whether such a situation exists in the given grammar. So here we have S derives L slash A. So for this, for S derives L production, the first of the RHS is open bracket. Okay, what is the first terminal in all the strings which is derived by using this production S derives L? The first terminal which will appear is open bracket. Okay, similarly for the production S derives A, all the strings which is derived by using this production, the first terminal is going to be A. Okay, so for this, the first is A. Similarly, take this production, L derives S. L derives S and S derives, S can derive A. So the first of this production, L derives S is also small a, the terminal A. So that means the first set of the production L derives S and S derives A are not unique. They are intersecting. There is in the intersection set of the first of the two productions S derives A and L derives S, you have common values. So that means both the productions S derives A and L derives S will be placed in the same cell in the LL1 parsing table. So that means that this grammar cannot be parsed by the LL1 parser. Okay, I repeat, just to find the RHS, just find the first of the RHS of all the productions given. If you don't know how to find the first and the follow, already I have in the last video compiler design part 1, I have told how to find the first and follow. So I'll give the link in the description box. Please go through the video. So here S derives L. In this production, the first of the RHS is open bracket. In S derives A, the first of RHS is small a. In L derives L dot S, the first of the RHS is L derives L, and but there are no productions given for L. In the production L derives S, S can derive, S is a non-terminal and this non-terminal S can derive the terminal A. So the first of L derives S is also A. So the first of two different productions has to be unique. It should not overlap, or there should not be two common terminals in the intersection sets. So, but here the first of S derives A is also A and the first of L derives S is also A. So such types of productions cannot be parsed by the LL1 parser, and so this grammar cannot be parsed. So C and D options are eliminated. Now coming back to options A and B, it should be either LR0 or it should be LR0 and SLR1. For that, you need to draw the DFA containing the canonical collection of LR0 items. Now this is our DFA, which contains a canonical collection of LR0 items. We first start with the state I0 with the augmented production. Now this is our augmented production. S dash derives dot S. Now what is the meaning of, I told you, canonical collection of LR0 items. What is the meaning of LR0 items? A production with a dot at some position on the RHS of the production is called as a LR0 item. So here, this is our augmented production. Augmented means this is not present in the grammar, given grammar, but we have added it. So it's called augmented production. S dash derives dot S, and this is called LR0 item because this is a production with a dot at the RHS of the production. Now, what is the meaning of this dot? The dot indicates what are all the terminals or the non-terminals which we have processed on the right hand side of the production. If there is a dot in the left of yes, it means yes is not yet processed. If there is a dot to the right of yes, it means yes has been processed. That is the meaning. So that means a parser can decide when to reduce. When all the terminals and non-terminals on the right hand side of the production has been processed, then it can decide to reduce at that point. Okay, so here first we start with state I0 where we add the augmented production. Then we see in the RHS we have a dot to the left of yes. Whenever there is a dot to the left of yes, we have to add all the productions of yes. So when we add all the productions, we have two productions for yes. Yes derives L. So we have to yes derives L, but we have a bracket here. So there is a dot to the left of bracket and we have S derives dot A. Okay. Then we have to apply. So from yes, what are all the productions which can be derived from yes? All that we are writing now, that is called as closure. That is called applying of closure. Now then next we apply go to. Applying go to is nothing but when in the state, if it processes an yes, then what is the other state to which it will go? So whenever in this state, if the state receives a yes, if the state processes a yes, then it has processed an yes. So it will go to this state. Yes dash derives yes dot. Because now the yes has been processed and so the dot is moved to the right side of yes. Similarly, when this state receives a open bracket, then then it goes to state I2. So in this state I2, you can see that the dot is moved to the right side of open bracket because now an open bracket has been processed. Now once, so first we write the go to. Go to means when it sees an yes, it will come to this state. When it receives a open bracket, it will come to state I2. When it when it processes a small a, it will go to state I3. Now, similarly, after processing the go to, then we apply the closure. When we apply the closure, we have to see where is the dot. We have to see the position of the dot on the RHS of the production. Here we have a dot on the left side of L. So when we have a dot on the left side of L, on the left side of a non-terminal, then we have to add all the productions of the corresponding to that non-terminal. So here we have added all the L productions. When we add all the L productions, here we get a dot to the left side of S. So we have to add the S productions also. Okay, so the first we have to apply go to, then we have to apply closure on the production which we have obtained. So now the DFA corresponding DFA is obtained like this. Now we get the final item. So what is the meaning of final item? When all the set of string on the RHS of the production is being processed, then we have a dot on the extreme right end of the production, RHS of the production. Then that corresponding LR0 item for every particular production of the grammar is called as a final item. Now here I1, I3, I5, I7 and I8. Okay, I7, I8. See here, I7 corresponds to the production, S derives L. I8 corresponds to the production, L derives L dot S. So for all the productions, the corresponding final item state, final item LR0 item states are represented by I1, I3, I5, I7 and I8. Okay. Now if there is no shift reduce conflict or reduce conflict, then it can be processed by a LR0 parser and SLR1 parser. Okay. If you see the final item states, if whenever you have a shift reduce conflict will happen if a state has a go to on a terminal, there will be a shift move. Okay, but if you see the final item states, there is no go to on a terminal in all these final item states. I7, I8. Okay, here we have I3. There is only one production item and there is no go to on a terminal in all these final item states. So there is no reduce conflicts here. So because of that, there is no shift reduce conflict because there is no go to on a terminal, and there is no reduce conflicts here because there will be two reduce productions. In reduce conflicts, there will be two reduce productions, but here we have only one production. So there is no possibility of a shift reduce conflict or a reduce conflict in this DFA. So because of that, it can be processed by an LR0 parser. If it can be processed by LR0 parser, it can also be processed by a SLR1 parser. So the answer for this question would be the grammar can be parsed by LR0 and SLR1 parsers. The next is a question which is asked in GATE 2012 examination. So here a LL1 parsing table is given here. This is your LL1 parsing table where you have the non-terminals on the left hand side and the terminals on the top on the columns. And your grammar is given here. And in the based on the options given, you need to just find the first of A and B and the follow of A and B. Okay, so we have to know what is the meaning of first and follow. So first, as I already told you, first of X is nothing but if X is going to derive some string, then what is going to be the terminal which will start, which will be appearing in the beginning of that string. Okay, first of X, say if I want to find the first of some non-terminal X, then how you have to find out is in all the strings which is derived from this non-terminal X, what will be the set of terminals which will appear first in those strings? Okay, what will be the terminals which can appear first in those set of strings which are derived from the non-terminal X? Okay, in case if the non-terminal X derives epsilon as per the grammar, then epsilon will also be in the first set of X. Okay, that is first is very simple. Similarly, follow of A, if you want to find the follow of some non-terminal A, follow is nothing but it is a set of terminals which can appear immediately to the right of A. You see the RHS of the production, and when you see the RHS, what will be the terminals which can appear to the right of that non-terminal A in some sentential form? Will be the follow for a non-terminal A. So as per the question given, these are the productions of the grammar. Okay. So first set for S is S can derive small a, S can derive small b, S can derive epsilon. So the first set of S is A, B and epsilon. A, for the first set of A is A derives S and S can derive A or B or epsilon. So A can derive S and S can derive A, B and epsilon. So the first set of A is again A, B and epsilon. Similarly, B can derive S and S can derive A, B and epsilon. So the first set of B is A, B and epsilon. Similarly, next we have to find the follow of S, A and B. Since S is the start symbol, follow of S would be dollar, and then we have to see whether S appears in the RHS of the production. So here S appears in the RHS, okay, but there is nothing which appears to the right. Follow means we have to see the terminals which appears to the right side of S, but there is nothing appearing to the right side of S in the RHS. So in that case, follow of S is equal to follow of LHS. So follow of S is equal to follow of A, and follow of A is, see here, follow of A is small b. A is followed by what appears to the right of A is small b. Follow of A is actually first of small b and capital B, and first of small b and capital B is B. Similarly, here follow of A is first of small a and capital B, which is nothing but small a. So follow of A is small a and small b. Okay, follow of A is small a and small b. Since follow of S is equal to follow of A and follow of S is equal to follow of B, follow of S is equal to A and B. Okay. Similarly, follow of S is equal to follow of B and follow of S is equal to follow of A. So whatever is there in the follow of S, whatever is there in the follow of S will be there in follow of B also. So the follow of B is also A, B and dollar. So that is the answer for our question. Next question is, which of the following is false? They have given the grammar S derives A, S, B or B, S, A or S, S or epsilon, where S is the only non-terminal symbol, is ambiguous. So they are telling that this grammar is ambiguous. We have to check out whether it is ambiguous or not. Next is YARK tool is a LALR1 parser generator. Now this is true. YARK is a LALR1 parser generator. Next, LL1 parser is a top-down parser. Yes, LL1 is a top-down parser where 1 indicates the number of look-ahead symbols. And then SLR is powerful than LALR. Now SLR is not powerful than LALR. Okay. In SLR parsing table, the number of reduce moves are placed in the follow of the LHS. In SLR parsing table, reduce moves will be placed in the follow of the LHS, in the terminals corresponding to the follow of the LHS. But in LALR parsing table, we will be merging the states which have the same LR0 items but differ only in the look ahead symbols. So the number of states are going to be reduced and we are going to have more blank entries in the LALR parser. When we have more blank entries, it has more error detection capability. So LALR parser is more powerful than SLR. So the second one is false. But we should also ensure that the first one is true. Okay, it says that this grammar is ambiguous. So I have written that grammar here. Just to take the first thing, S derives ASB and we have S derives SS and we have S derives epsilon. I've just taken the string AB. For the string AB, I can generate a parse tree like this. S derives ASB and then from S I can derive epsilon and I'll be getting the string AB. Or I can generate it by S derives SS and from S I can again generate ASB and from S I can generate epsilon. So here also I can generate the string AB. So you have two different parse trees which can be generated for a particular string AB. So this particular grammar is ambiguous, is true. Okay, so the false in this is statement number 2, which is SLR is powerful than LALR. It is false. Okay, the next question is asked in TRB Polytechnic exam 2017 for 2 marks. This question has been asked for 2 marks. They have given a grammar here and they've asked after the elimination of left recursion, we get the following. So which will be the set of productions we will get after eliminating left recursion in this grammar. Now we have to know what is left recursion. Left recursion is nothing but whenever the leftmost symbol of the body is the same as a non-terminal at the head of the production. Okay. In simple terms, if I have a production of the form A derives A alpha. Okay. So here the leftmost symbol of the body is A and the symbol at the head of the production is also A. Now this type of productions are called productions which are having left recursion. Now the problem with these type of productions is the compiler or the parser may get stuck up in an infinite loop because this A will be replaced with A derives this A will be again replaced with A alpha and that A will be again replaced with A alpha and so on. Okay, so it may get stuck up in an infinite loop and so it is necessary for us to eliminate the left recursion in these type of productions. So another example is expression derives expression plus term. So here also this, if I have an production like this expression in the production will be replaced with expression plus term. Again that expression will be replaced with expression plus term and so on. So it may get stuck up, the compiler may get stuck up in an infinite loop. So if you have productions of the form A derives A alpha or beta, then to eliminate left recursion, the step which you have to follow is productions of the form A derives A alpha or beta have to be replaced with A derives beta A dash and A dash derives alpha A dash or epsilon. Okay, A derives beta A dash and A dash derives alpha A dash or epsilon. Now applying this to our question which is given. So the grammar which is given here is S derives L or A and L derives LS or S. So here we have L derives LS where we have left recursion. Now considering L as A and LS as A alpha and S as beta, when we apply this A derives, to eliminate left recursion, we need to apply A derives beta A dash and A dash derives alpha A dash or epsilon. So when we apply it, we'll be getting this one. Okay, L derives S L dash and L dash derives epsilon or S L dash. Now coming back to our question, there is nothing which exactly matches with that, but instead of L dash, they have written A here. Okay, this it matches with option A. L derives S instead of L dash, they have written A here, and L dash derives S L dash. Instead of that, they have written A here. So option A matches with the answer which we have got. So the right answer for this question would be option A. Okay, that's all for this video. If you have any doubts, please mention it in the comments below. And if you like the video, if you found the contents of the video useful, do give a like to the video. And for more such videos, subscribe to the channel. See you in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.